armed with two wingmen at his confirmation hearing tomorrow. Two former Armed Services chairmen, pretty powerful, one from each party, Georgia Democrat Sam Nunn and Virginia Republican John Warner. Joining me now is two Democrats on the Armed Services Committee, Florida Senator Bill Nelson and New Hampshire Senator Jeanne Shaheen. Thank you both. Thanks so much for joining us today. So it's a big day for Chuck Hagel. What are, Senator Shaheen, your notion right now? Do you think he can get past all of the criticism that he's had from groups concerned about his positions on nuclear weapons, on Israel, on Iran, on women in combat, a big issue for you, I know, from your work on the defense appropriation bill, and also the gay community?
Well, I had some serious questions for Chuck Hagel when we sat down last week, but he answered them satisfactorily. And I think the fact that Senator Cochran from Mississippi came out in support of him, that he's had a recent letter with a very strong bipartisan list of former defense secretaries, including Colin Powell and Gates, and a bipartisan group of secretaries of state and defense. I think all of that speaks to his favor. And as I said, I was pleased to hear his responses on some of the questions I asked him about how he was going to implement things like the Shaheen Amendment that make sure that women in the military who are victims of rape or incest can get access to reproductive health services, to abortion if they choose to do that. And he gave me very positive responses, even though he pointed out he's anti-choice. He said his policy would be to implement the laws that have been passed by this Congress and to support the administration's policies. So I was pleased to hear his responses.
Senator Nelson, you've been around for a long time, you and Senator Shaheen. What are the pitfalls, though, for Chuck Hagel? Because there are going to be some people gunning for him tomorrow.
The pitfalls are partisan politics, plain and simple. Chuck will be confirmed, but it won't be without a fight. And unfortunately, we're going to have the fight. But he's a solid former U.S. Senator. He's a patriot. He's a good public servant. And I think he will be confirmed.
Let me ask you both about gun legislation, because we had this powerfully emotional hearing with Gabby Giffords testifying in front of Pat Leahy in the Judiciary Committee today. Senator Shaheen, will that make a difference this time?
I think anybody who watched Gabby Giffords had to be moved by the example, the real inspirational example that she's provided, she and her husband Mark Kelly, and their effort to address the gun violence that we've seen way too much of in this country. And I'm hopeful that as the result of this debate, we are going to see some comprehensive legislation that really gets at the causes of some of this violence. I think the comprehensive background checks is something that we ought to be looking very closely at. I think let's look at our mental health system, and let's look at how the magazines and at all of the issues that are contributing to the situation that we have right now.
And Senator Nelson, with you and Senator Shaheen there, I've got to ask you about immigration, because coming off of this, a week after the inaugural, already we're seeing John McCain and Chuck Schumer as the new odd couple in the Senate, and Marco Rubio joining in. Is this a rare but brief bipartisanship in the Senate, or might this thing actually yield comprehensive immigration reform?
At the end of the day, I think we will get comprehensive immigration reform. I think it's propelled as a result of the election. This again is partisan politics, but one of the partisans understanding that this is a question of survival. And good news of that is that this is going to produce some common sense legislation that should have already been produced, but for the extremists on this issue. It's common sense to limit the number of bullets in a clip. It's common sense to do a criminal background check. And it's common sense that guns like AK-47s are for killing, not for hunting.
But, you know, one of the positive aspects, I think, of the coming together around immigration and some of the other debates that we're having, the agreement on rules in the Senate, is that that sends a very strong message to the public who want us to work together. And I think the more we can do that and show that we can address the big challenges facing this country, the more confidence there's going to be in every other issue that we face. So I think it's very important that we're seeing this coming together to address big issues.
Well, thank you both so very much. And Senator Shaheen, partly related to that Shaheen amendment, which you and I have talked about before, coming up next, we have a segment with the director of the Oscar-nominated documentary exposing the scandal of sexual assault in the military.